Many years ago, in ancient Scandinavia, lived a group of Germanic tribes known as the Vikings. The Vikings were well known for their brutality in battle. Their said brutality bled into their religion, as well as how they viewed their heroes, from their Norse deities to the hero Beowulf. Today I'll be discussing said brutality in the Norse mythos. For example, in the Norse creation story, the world is started with two worlds, Niflheim and Muspelheim, with Muspelheim being the land of fire and Niflheim the land of fog and cold. Between the two is the Gundagap, the yawning void, from which nothing exists. And as ice flows from Niflheim move to the Gundagap and meet the Muspelheim's fires, and from the melted ice came forth a cow and a giant. The giant was neither male nor female, and its name was Ymir. Ymir was a giant, the tallest to have ever existed, and from his armpits and between his legs burst forth other giants. And the giant named Ymir fed from the cow's milk, and the cow fed by licking the ice. But as the cow licked the ice, eventually a god came from the ice, who then married one of Ymir's offspring, produced 3 children, Odin, Vili, and Ve, who then murdered Ymir in order to build a world that they could live in, as if they went into Niflheim or Muspelheim they'd die. After creating said world and finding it had no life, they decided to make the worms eating the flesh turn to dwarves. They carved out an aspen and willow tree to make a man. Then they did whatever they wanted. Then Vili and Ve aren't mentioned anywhere after that. Then Odin then went on to have many children of his own, including Thor, who was well known for his sheer brutality as well as being one of the strongest of the gods. He was known for slaughtering giants and being very angry all the time. And he tended to break his weapons because he was the strongest. Every time he hit someone, it broke. And sometimes in his anger, he'd throw the weapons at the giants, and lose them. So, when one day Loki, Odin's brother, cut off Thor's wife's hair, whose name was Lady Sif, and cut it all the way to the root so that it couldn't grow back, Thor threatened Loki that he'd break every single one of his bones every day for the rest of Loki's life unless he fixed the problem. Loki, fearing Thor's wrath, went to the dwarves and tricked them into building treasures for them, including saying one of them must be a golden hair that can bind to head and grow naturally. As well as, in order to trick them, he made it so that one rival group of dwarves and the other rival group of dwarves had a competition, and the gods would be the judges. One realized what Loki was trying to do, and said, "You have no stake in this, so if we win, we're going to get your head." And Loki begrudgingly agreed. So, when the dwarves who wanted Loki's head were making their treasures, Loki would keep biting Brock, the dwarf that was manning the bellows, as a fly, in order to make Brock's bellowing slow, causing the metal to warp that Sindri was working on. After both groups of dwarves had finished their treasures, they went to the Aesir in order to show the treasures and have them judged. First, the sons of Ivaldi showed their treasures, with their first treasure being a spear for Odin, which never missed, as well as it was unbreakable, which was good as Odin lost an eye when he gave it up to Mimir, so he couldn't aim as well. The second gift that Ivaldi's sons had was the hair made of solid gold for Lady Sif, which Thor immediately gave to Lady Sif, and she was more beautiful than she was before Loki cut her hair off. And their final gift was a boat that was one of the second largest in the world, that what could be folded down into a simple piece of cloth that can be put in your pocket, then unfolded to carry an entire army. Then Loki, thinking that their victory was in the bag, grew content. But as Brock began showing the gifts, the first one was a gold boar to pull Faye's chariot over water, land that would never tire. The second gift was a gold ring named Sleipnir that kept multiplying every couple months. And after those two, Loki thought they were pretty even. There's a good chance that Ivaldi's sons won, but then Brock, who was the only one who went there, brought out a hammer named Mjolnir that had a short hammer for Thor. The thing is, Thor previously, as I said, was bad with weapons due to his anger. So Thor's hammer was unbreakable. They made it so that it never missed their target, so that it could grow and expand and would always come to his hand. After hearing that, all the gods agreed that that was the best of the gifts. So Brock got out his knife and was going to take Loki's head when Loki said, "Oh, I only said you could have my head. I never said you could cut my neck." And Odin, seeing the loophole, allowed it. But Brock was allowed to stitch Loki's lips shut. But after putting the leather to Loki's lips and tried to pierce the leather with the knife, he found that it wouldn't go through. And Loki then told him that to make sure that my ploy about you're not allowed to cut my neck didn't work, I made it so that no blade can cut me. So Brock got out a leather puncher, used for sewing leather, and punched holes through Loki's lips and sewed his mouth shut for multiple days. Which, though was painful, it was believed that the lack of the ability to talk was even more painful for Loki, as that was a whole aspect of his personality, was that he was a sly talker. But even after having his lips sewn shut by Brock, he still didn't learn his lesson and continued to mess with the other gods. He even cheated on his wife and had 3 children who were destined to kill the rest of the gods. Fenrir, a wolf who was destined to kill Odin. Jormungandr, a snake destined to kill Thor. And Hel, the goddess of the underworld. And, to be fair, Odin had some fault in it as well, as if it weren't for Odin tying Fenrir up with an unbreakable chain and tossing Jormungandr into the sea, as well as sending Hela into Helheim as far away from them as possible, they wouldn't have hated the gods, and they wouldn't have attacked the gods. And then Loki decided to cause even more trouble, like always, as he killed Balder, one of Odin's children, brother of Thor, who was literally the god of light and love, making everyone in the world cry, because Hela, Loki's daughter, said that if everyone in the world would cry at once, she'd let Balder come back. But Loki was the one being who decided not to cry. Literally only one. That's how loved Balder was. And yet Loki killed him. But after that, Loki was punished thoroughly. He was tied to a rock, had a venomous snake tied above his head, dripping poison onto his face, constantly hidden deep below the earth, in constant pain and agony, and sometimes he writhes, trying to escape, causing earthquakes. His wife tries to stop the venom from seeping into his wounds on his face, but she has to empty her bucket every so often, causing him to wince even more in agony. And the Vikings' belief doesn't just apply to their gods, but their heroes as well, like the hero Beowulf, who was very well known for killing 3 monsters in extremely brutal ways, with the first one being he ripped off its arm, causing it to bleed to death. The second one, he stabbed with a magic sword, which promptly disintegrated. And the third one was a dragon that he ripped the heart out of. How he even did that was only because the dragon had a weak spot that was able to be stabbed, and then he grabbed the heart and ripped it out. And like most Norse stories, he dies. Just like in Ragnarok, the Norse gods die. They always end with the hero dying. But Beowulf died via being bitten in the neck by a dragon. Not the wound that killed him, but the venom. Similar to how Thor was also conveniently bit in the neck by a dragon-like Jormungandr, a giant snake, but only died due to the venom. So Beowulf and Thor are very similar in that aspect, with only slight differences between them, with the brutality still remaining the same. In the end, the Vikings were brutal as well as their gods.